entry level fast food job that you then move up a ladder on. Like maybe you start in fast food and you work your way up and become like, I don't know, a manager for some sort of uh, food service company or something. But it sounds like
Warehouse
that.
manager for Gordon's or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean, a lot of people have a story like that, but
yeah,
that's not really. It looks like that's becoming less and less possible. It looks like we're
yes,
getting
it
to the
is.
point where, like,
It
to
is.
be like the line manager at the McDonald's, they want you to have like a 4-year degree.
Yes, and the implication for this is you had asked how is this sustainable? And the answer to the question is it's not sustainable in the long term. But I'm 24, so I use myself as an example. What happens in 15 years when I'm staring down someone my age is staring down the age of 40 and has never had a job good enough to buy a home, buy a new car, and form a family?
Hmm.
So yeah, corporations might have a come to Jesus moment in 15 years after you have fucked
Yeah,
about 70 million people who are currently under the age of 35, white
yeah.
people
Who
who are
who never got
currently under the
married,
age
never
of
had
35.
kids. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Didn't start families. Yep.
I'm about to
That
call the
is the social
police.
implication of this.
Hello, this is the
Yeah.
police.
And I don't I
Put your hands down.
other
Doctor,
than
this is
other than
immigration
state
police
policy, the
documents.
state forcing
This is
a
Detective
change in the
Alonzo with
economy,
Internal Affairs.
I can't.
We actually
Fuck off, Alonzo.
that police officer is gay. I just want-
Wow. I don't understand why.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to By the Numbers, episode 11. James Carlson here. I'm back with Alex McNabb as usual. We have a pretty dense topic today. Actually, we're going to cover credentialism and sort of the creep of requirements that are strangling the American worker. There's quite a bit to say, right, Alex?
Yes. Yes, there
I'm gonna
is.
I'm gonna jump right in here with the information I gathered, because when I first started looking into this, I was met with a hilarious article about a restaurant in Washington D.C. that requires their new servers to have bachelor degrees.
What?
Yeah, it's at the very top of the prep.
But,
Um,
but
the
why?
because they're serving people rosé cider and prosciutto wrapped melon slices. I don't fucking know because they're dumb. Like they're
What kind of bachelor's degree?
It didn't say. It just said a 4-year degree. But well, this is the thing. As we'll go through the data, there's this trend with a lot of employers. It doesn't really matter what your 4-year degree is. It's just have a 4-year degree. The 4-year degree can be in explaining the history of the phallus in Western culture, and it doesn't matter. Like,
I mean, is the theory that you're trying to use this as a proxy for like an IQ test? I've heard that that's sort of the rationale behind doing that.
I mean, maybe because this restaurant, for example, was in Washington D.C., which is obviously extremely heavily black. So maybe they don't want blacks pouring rosé.
The problem too with that is that you get grade inflation these days to the point where, I mean, there's plenty of 4-year programs that you can just sleep through.
Well, yeah, you and I talked about this off the air one time, and I was texting you. I was texting you data on it. I don't have it in front of me, but for people of color and especially for women with female professors, grade inflation is a very real thing. There are professors who just say, "Oh, you're black, okay, you pass." Mark, you're great. Like it's a bad IQ test proxy.
Yeah.
But it's a nice introduction to how credentialism is killing America. I found sort of so much fascinating data here, and the crux of it from a Harvard study, and I'm going to refer back to this for most of the program, is what's called the degree gap. And the essence of this, without throwing numbers at it immediately, is that boomers are doing jobs, and to some degree Xers are doing jobs with only having a high school degree. And they're good jobs. These are supervisors, these are management, or they've worked in the same position for, I don't know, 30 years. These are good jobs.
Mhm.
They have no degree. But then the people who are coming in behind them are required to have degrees. So a great example, a concrete example, was 16% of current and outgoing production managers have college degrees. Or I'm sorry, do not have a college degree. 67% of the new ones that they're hiring have to have one.
Production managers?
Production managers.
But I mean, I feel like that's one of those jobs where you work in the field for a while, and then eventually you graduate to the point where you're able to direct the process, right?
It is, yeah.
Well,
But
like
that-
what good is it to bring in somebody who's got a 4-year degree in underwater basket weaving? Like, how does that translate into being able to manage a production line?
I don't know.
Especially-
I couldn't find an answer. I couldn't find answers. This is the thing with the sort of the degree gap and the credentialism. I cannot find concrete answers for why the entirety of the economy is doing this. It's just like corporate behavior that they seem to think people with a degree are inherently more valuable. I mean, obviously, if you're a theoretical physicist with a fucking PhD, you're inherently more valuable, but in a very specific way. Like, you can't put broad value on just holding a degree, yet they try to.
Right.
You know, another one from this Harvard study is that, so referring to the degree gap, an even bigger one is supervisors in lawnscaping, lawn service, and groundskeeping workers. The degree gap is 55%, meaning they now want the majority of people they're hiring in to have a 4-year degree.
That doesn't, because see, I've worked in that particular job. People
Right. Yeah, so have I.
with 4-year degrees don't want to go into landscaping because it's not like you sit in the air conditioning if you're a manager in a landscaping company. No, you're probably going to be out there running a weed eater and a mower half the time. So why on earth would you want to go through 4 years of college and then be out in like the South Carolina sunshine and heat, humidity, running a landscaping company? I mean,
Right.
that doesn't make fucking sense.
And
It's a total mismatch.
it is. And it's a two-directional question, right? Because you don't want to do it. And why do they want to hire a guy with a 4-year degree to do it? And again, it just seems that it's the thing to do. You want college-educated workers. And there's there's not a sense of logic to this whole process.
I mean,
Um,
I'm used to the idea of businesses like asking for the moon. And I always just kind of assumed it was
Yes.
like, well, they ask for the moon and then they take what they gotta, get. They take what they get. But I don't know how true that is. Are they just going without these employees if they put out like an advertisement for the hypothetical landscaping contractor manager and he's going to have like his master's degree in something, apparently doesn't matter, and they don't find the guy, so then they just promote somebody within the company. Like, how does this work whenever they don't find the qualified personnel?
Yeah, so when I was looking into that, it seems to depend on the business. So for, if it's a large company, as in, doing tech or something like that, they will either poach someone. So actually tech companies have a long history of doing this. If they can't find anyone, they poach people from their competitor by offering sort of ridiculous initial salaries. Microsoft will take someone off Google for $175,000 signing, going like they do that. As for something like a landscaping company where they can't get immigrants legally, so they can't fill it that way, it seems to be that they eventually give in and they eventually move someone up within their ranks to do the work. But it still says a lot that the preference is still for a college degree, that they're trying to hire people this way.
Yeah.
It's entirely nonsensical.
It makes no sense. Like, just from my practical experience with landscaping, college graduates are not wanting to go into that. No one is like flipping through the want ads and being like, oh, cool. Well, sweet. I can go bust my ass 70 hours a week for a landscaping company working as a manager. And of course, an employee is going to call out and I'll be out there driving a mower and running a weed eater. Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be a really fun time. So, like, on top of my job as manager, I also have to do all of the grunt work too, because people calling out and me having to fill in and cover the slack. Like, no one wants to do that.
No, absolutely not. But
So
here's some other good ones with a big degree gap, which means they want more people coming in with college degrees than currently have them. Supervisors of transportation and material moving, vehicle operators, healthcare workers, bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing clerks, sales representatives, wholesale and manufacture, retail supervisors. There was another big one here.
But yet again, a lot of those jobs, like the retail supervisor, that's usually somebody who's promoted internally, like they've been there for a long time.
For the boomers, yes.
Yeah.
And
then you get seniority and you move up. Yeah.
Telemarketers. They want your telemarketer to have a 4-year degree.
Stupid.
Food service managers.
Uh-huh.
I actually worked for when I worked at McDonald's in my teens. Two of the managers had 4-year degrees. One of them had political science, which you're not going to find a political science job in rural Michigan, so whatever. But the other one, she was an accountant.
That's a job that's kind of hard to find anywhere, though. Like, political science as a bachelor's, like your options are going to be kind of limited anyway.
This is true. Procurement clerk. Oh my God, the residential advisor. I don't even know what that is. Human resources. And this is going to be a sort of a consistent theme throughout the show, and it's something I have always harped on because I actually have a really good buddy whose mother was a bookkeeper. So she trained him to be a bookkeeper. He had to go take a couple classes and get, whatever the recognition was in his state as a bookkeeper. His mother worked for an NGO, made a very nice living, and he can't get a job despite his training, exposure, and licensure because he doesn't have a degree. No one will hire him. He can't find a job. And this is
you're talking about, like, you got the certification, you've got whatever the credential is, and then on top of that, you're supposed to have your 4-year degree.
They want him to have an accounting degree.
Yeah,
which is usually you can get a bachelor's, but usually to be taken seriously, you get a master's. I mean, essentially they want him to go to school for 5 years.
Yeah, because they do that with the BSN in nursing. Like, oh, you should also have a 4-year degree in this.
Well, so this is another one. You and I talk about this all the damn time. LPNs are essentially extinct, and the nursing programs that they've been doing for the past, 40 years are becoming redundant because they want everyone to have a bachelor degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And meanwhile, you've got, like, nursing homes that are so strapped for employees that they're not even taking CNAs at this point. They're just taking people off the street, some of which don't even have, like, a fucking GED. That's how understaffed they are. So it's very bizarre to witness this, like, this constant wishing for the moon and the stars whenever it comes to a prospective employee, and then on the other hand, being chronically understaffed in dangerous and unproductive ways, and it's like, how about a little common sense? Like, does the HR department or whoever's doing the hiring, do they just not communicate with the rest of the company? Do they just live in their own little universe?
No, well, the HR department used to be staffed by people who didn't have degrees either, but now everyone has a freaking human resources degree. They attach human resources to qualifications to all kinds of degrees now. You take human resources classes when you go for business. Like, there are people with 4- and 6-year business degrees working in HR departments. This is part of the problem.
Yeah.
So no, these people are not reflecting, and it shows. It shows. I found the one statistic from All Work, which showed, now it was a study, but they cited it, that 61% of entry level jobs that are listed require 3 or more years of experience. An entry level job, Alex.
But that's not entry level if you have to have experience. That's the specific opposite of an entry level job.
You tell that to them. So then there was another one on. There was a study cited in Pitt News about how on Indeed, 35% of entry level marked jobs require 3 or more years of experience.
Yeah.
Again, it's not an entry level job.
Yeah, it's not entry level. I see. My experience with that was like back in the early 2000s. There was near where I live, there is a Volvo plant, and it regularly would have layoffs. And there was something that happened economically at this period in time where they were trying to retrain workers. Like, remember this whole like push to do the worker retraining?
Yeah, that was a big thing. That was a huge thing under Obama. We're going to retrain the workforce.
Yep, retrain the workforce. I got in on that. I can't remember if I got extra financial aid or whatever it was, but anyway, I got a HVAC universal certification. I still have it because I don't think it ever expires unless something has changed. It's just permanent. Like, you get it one time, you're good to go for the rest of your life. Congratulations. Now you've been blessed. You are a universal heating, ventilation, and air conditioning technician. Wonderful, right? Anyway, the thing I ran into, though, is you go through this program, and then it's like, okay, so what do I do for a job now? It's like, well, you do nothing because no one's going to hire you because you don't have any experience. And then that begs the question of, well, how does one get experience in this field? And as near as I could gather, it was like, well, if you know somebody, maybe if you're like, I don't know, having sex with a hiring manager or something. But there was no like pathway. There was no pipeline to going from the retraining, the certification to the job. It didn't exist.
Right, there was just a cliff. After you got your certification, you were thrown off the cliff, and they're like, "Okay, fly."
Don't have wings. Yeah, and then you plummet to the ground, and you never use it. I never used it. Still have it. Never used it.
I'm not surprised at all. I mean, we touched on this on the last show. Not only is there no institutionalized mechanism to do it in modern sort of neoliberal hellscape America, there's no social network either.
Yeah.
There's no social network to be able to find this work anyway. Like, they just chuck you into the void and like, good luck.
Absolutely.
And I found this really hilarious story I shared with you just before we went on the air, which was the goofy company requiring 4 years of. So this was a story about a job listing that required 4 years of experience with a program called Fast API. And the guy and the man who created the program saw the job listing, and he said, how am I supposed to apply for that job when I only created the program 18 months ago? Like, no one is qualified. No one has 4 years of experience with my program. It's a year and a half old.
So they're just copy pasting the job requirements from
essentially,
posting to posting.
Yes.
Like, go up 3 years. 3 years. Yeah, make it 3 years experience for whatever it is. 3 years.
Corporate America is engaging in sort of lemming behavior that they don't themselves understand.
Yeah.
And that they, for now, seem to be surviving. I couldn't find, the labor market is tight, but I couldn't find any evidence that this is horribly damaging them yet. But it is getting progressively worse because they just won't let up on the degree requirements. I mean, the fact that currently basically zero telemarketers have college degrees, and now 26% of the ones that they want to hire are listed with college degree, these things are not sustainable.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
But you have to remember that capitalism has a very brief time horizon, like 4 to 5 years at most. Time is not their friend, and they ignore it. Like, it, profit now, income now, work now.
Okay, so it looks like there's just like a bottleneck too, where if you are working in like these low wage, like so-called entry-level jobs, you're not able to move up. Like you're just
Correct.
trapped there.
You become static and they don't move you anymore. And I found a variety of reasons for this. One of them is the automated software. You apply for a better job, but the AI software kicks you into the rejected bin because it doesn't care about all your skills. It doesn't care if if you worked in if you were a statistical assistant for 25 years and you apply to be a data analyst, like a proper analyst, it does not care about your 25 years of experience because you don't have a degree. So no, thank you. And it kicks you into the rejected bin, and a human being never looks at your application ever.
Yeah, so I see you over here. You've got this little note about 40% of recent trade school grads are underemployed due to experience requirements, which that's me. That was me.
Right. You got your recognition, and then essentially we're told, okay, well, fuck you. Like, never mind. Cool.
Yeah, I was watching a David Stewart video, and he was talking about credentialism, and he has a background as a school teacher. One of the things he was pointing out is like to be like a superintendent or essentially be any kind of supervisory position in teaching, they want you to have like a master's in teaching. And he was like, this doesn't make any sense when you think about it, because your job is not to go into a classroom and use all of this extremely advanced knowledge of teaching. What your job is to manage the teachers. Like, this is a management position. The type of education degree that they're asking for has jack shit to do with your day-to-day job requirements, which are going to be managing people, scheduling, that kind of stuff, onboarding people, that sort of thing. So it doesn't make sense for you to have like a master's in education. You probably, in fact, want to have maybe some training in something else, like related to business management.
No, Alex, that would be eminently logical, and we can't have that here. This is this is late stage America. Okay.
Because essentially, what it looks like with a lot of these positions, it's like this is just another tax you have to pay before you can get the job title. I mean, get the job position. Like, go pay your tax, get your little tax stamp, so that now you could be magically accepted into this particular role. No, the education has nothing to do with what you're going to do on your job, but it's going to be an obstacle that you're going to have to climb over.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a great statistic I found from Department of Labor related organization, which is that of the 71 million Americans who work in low wage work, about 16 million of them have the skill base and institutional knowledge to move up within the organization. But because the American companies do not recognize the value of knowledge or experience within an organization, because you don't have a degree, you are essentially stuck as the lowest of wage slaves.
Yeah, and right now I see it.
This has essentially killed, and this was predicted by Randall Collins' book, The Credential Society, in 1979. This has essentially killed economic mobility, because there are millions, particularly white people. There are millions of working white people who could be moving up in organizations that are static.
Yeah, I see the abstract of this paper is the demand for a skilled workforce increasing faster than the supply of workers with college degrees. Result, rising wage inequality by education levels in firms facing a skills gap. Well, it is often assumed that increasing the number of college graduates is required to fill this gap. See, that's the assumption I would question. This paper explores the extent to which workers without BA college degrees can help fill this gap. But isn't that kind of self-evident? Like, if you've got a firm and people have been working there for a while, probably there are people within the organization that have the skills to move up. Would that not compute? Let's see here. Find workers up to degrees. They're calculating like skill distance, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. And if you went from not working at the firm to working there, you've already gone through one kind of skill transition, right? Like, you've proven your ability to go from point A to point B. So to go from B to C sort of makes sense, right? Like, yeah, you probably could take a lot of these people and move them on up the ladder, which is likely how things used to work.
It is how
Oh.
things used to work. Boomers did this without college degrees. They were just there. It wasn't even a ladder. It was an escalator, essentially. You stepped onto it, and there was a natural progression.
Yeah.
You stayed at the company, you naturally progressed, or you were hired at another company because they recognized your skill set and the value of it, but that is gone. I can't stress this enough. It is dying with the boomers. The boomers are the last people who really got to enjoy work without credentialism and HR and all of this crap.
Yeah.
And of course, boomers are also the same people who tell everyone else, "Well, get over it, you lazy bastard."
Yeah. Because boomers love their anecdotes too. Like, so their personal anecdotes kind of define how they interact with reality. Like, well, I did X and then Y and then Z, and then I bought my my truck truck.
Yeah, so there's actually this woman right now, this mother who's been getting famous on.
Yep.
You know about her?
I know you're talking about, yeah, because she was talking about how she wished that she had like put trailers or something on her property so her kids would have.
Yeah, that woman. So she got famous for a video she made. She was sitting in her car in this original video, and she was saying, I was taught by her parents. So her parents were boomers, and she's like a late Gen Xer or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she's talking about how her parents did everything right for boomers, and they taught her the same process, and she was able to go through the same process. So naturally, she taught her kids, you do everything right, you do this step and this step and this step, you go to college, you get good grades, out of yada 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 bullshit, and you will do fine in life. Well, come to find out, obviously that's not true anymore. Her kids have degrees. They're underpaid for their degrees, and things are so expensive now, like rent. Like, she used her son as an example. How do he has a job he's underpaid for, but it's the only job he could get, and he can't move out because rent in their small town for even a 1-bedroom apartment is like $1,400.
It's astronomical. Yeah. And one of the things that can drive that, hilariously enough, is your proximity to like a college town, right?
Yes.
I mean, talk about some bitter irony there. Like, you can't afford to move out because other people are trying to get onto this broken escalator. So they're going to college and then buying up or basically renting all the apartments and all the housing nearby and driving the prices up. I mean, it's fucking wild.
So I followed this woman, and every day I check what she makes. And most of the time what she's doing is she's arguing with either people her age she's like 52, 53, or boomers. And all of these people are like, you just got to tell them to work harder. They have to have a better attitude. They need an attitude. You have to stop enabling. Like, the people cannot comprehend how different the environment is. Just yank on the bootstrap.
There's a study. I don't think I could find it off the top of my head, but there is research into this phenomenon where basically, if you get lucky, you start to mentally construct how it was actually like your skills and work that got you whatever the thing was. Like,
I can believe that.
There's some sort of rationalization thing where it's very hard for people to just like accept, like, wow, man, I got fucking lucky on that. Like, even in case of like just getting a large sum of money, just be like, well, it's because I made sure I was in the right place at the right time, and then this money fell from the sky and I got it because I'm so good. Like, they incorporate this kind of rationale to deal with the fact that whatever windfall they received was just that. It was just a windfall. It was just something that came out of the sky, and they had no real control over it.
I can believe that, especially because boomers existed in a policy environment. The state had a policy environment that enabled massive prosperity.
Yeah.
But they are now post hoc rationalizing it as, I worked hard. pulled by my bootstraps.
Yeah. Well, they're like I said, their entire existence is very anecdotal. Like they will tell you their personal
Yes,
anecdotes. One of the things that you'll see in comment sections will be like, well, my son, we did X, Y, and we did this, and he went to this school, and then we got him in over blah 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 blah. And it's like no one cares about your personal anecdote. Okay, we're talking about like broad trends. Your anecdotes don't fucking count. It's
yeah, but
really annoying.
see, this is the thing, and this is sort of a feature of American society more generally that I can't stand. But boomers in particular, conservatives suffer from this the worst. Systems do not exist in their mind. There is
Yeah.
no such thing as a system. They can't view, like, they could not comprehend the abstract of companies engaging in sort of like a herd mentality with the credentialism thing. They could never imagine that it's a collective corporate culture that 61% of entry level jobs require 3-year experience.
Yeah.
Like that, a boomer can't, and a conservative, they refuse to view that as a system thing. And they'll probably tell you you're lying. They're like, oh, you're exaggerating. Blah, blah, blah. Like there's no comprehension of that as a systemic issue. And we touched on it in the last show. When you suggest that it is a systemic issue, which is generally, if you're intelligent, followed by, okay, well, we have to enact a change. The policy of this, you need state policy to change this, then they get really upset. Because you've essentially just questioned what they view as like a law of nature, the same as gravity.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The other thing too is like hidden in that is implication of like, well, you sir, you were just kind of lucky. Like you're not actually good. I think that's why it gets them, because if it hits them in the ego, like maybe
Yes,
it wasn't that you were an extraordinary person. Maybe you just happened to be in a very prosperous time where there were structural forces that enabled you to get where you are. Maybe that's what actually happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And they hate that. I used to get in an argument with an uncle. He made a lot of money working on oil rigs off the coast of Texas. And whenever anyone, and this is when I still had Facebook years ago, whenever anyone would complain about the job market in Michigan, his immediate response would, now this is a retired boomer with like 2 pickup trucks and 2 homes and a fucking boat and the whole shebang.
Whenever boomer package.
anyone would complain about the job market in Michigan, his immediate answer was, why aren't you working on oil rigs off Texas? Go work on an oil rig off Texas. And it's like,
well, let's unpack that for a second. Like, why don't you just leave your home state, wherever you're living, just pull up your fucking roots and just take off across the goddamn country to hunt down a job?
Yes.
Well, who wants to live in a fucking country like that?
No one, except for boomers, because they don't actually have to. He doesn't have to.
Because they're sociopaths that just don't have any kind of like connection to anything. They don't give a shit. Like, people use, I know it's hard to understand, especially if you're an American, but people used to like to live in a community where they'd grown up. They like to be in the same place. I mean, maybe this is just part of the American psychosis, because a lot of Americans, I think, on some genetic level, they really do accept this nomadic lifestyle of like, oh yeah, we just chase income all over the place.
Well, it's ideological materialism.
Yeah.
It's the ideology of materialism. I can't get thing I want here, therefore I go somewhere else to get thing.
Yeah.
No, family doesn't matter. Community doesn't matter. Connections, you can make a whole list of things. Oh, well, doesn't matter. Screw all of that. I can get the thing I want if I go 800 miles away.
In fact, this is one of the things that those of us boomer parents have always complained about too, is how many times we were moved around as kids by our parents chasing money.
Well, and they sell things. So this is my paternal grandmother held, and she worked factory worker her whole life, held every bit of property she ever bought, essentially, so that when she died, and she has passed, she could leave it to her 2 sons. On the other side of my family, and most other people I know with boomer parents, the mentality is spend, use, sell, and abuse it all until you die and leave debt in your wake.
Yeah.
And
they don't
it's a totally abnormal social phenomenon compared to the vast majority of history.
Yeah,
the
and
West.
just they also tend to have like a lack of investment in their children to a large extent too. They're not particularly interested in what they're up to, how they're doing, how their lives are going.
Well,
Uh, yeah,
this is another thing that woman, and I wish I could think of her name, but it doesn't really matter. She got into, I was watching a video last night. She got into was responding to a comment by a boomer because the boomer was like, they're your children. You raise them, you pass on your knowledge, you kick them out of the house. They're adults. It's their problem. And the mom responds like, no, they're my children. I want them to have a nice life. I don't
right.
want them to struggle, and I don't want to die knowing that they're struggling. Like, and the boomer is just like, no, 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 no. Once they're out of the house, they're not your problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Why
It
do
cease
you
to exist.
care? They're adults.
I mean, I don't want to like turn this entire show into just hating on boomers, as easy as that would be
It's
to do, because
it's
I
very
fucking
easy to
despise
do.
them and they're
It's
horrible
very easy to
creatures.
do.
But they sort of act like they have two children. This is like a temporary assignment. I don't even know why they did it, to be honest. I don't understand the point of the
Habit.
boomer. Yeah, it's like either habit or maybe it's just because you're supposed to do it or something. Because it's also very odd how they almost all of them stuck religiously to only having two children. Like two, that's it. It's kind of strange. Anyway, it's like they put in their service with the kids, and they don't. Honestly, it tended to be half-assed for the most part. Put in the bare minimum with your two kids until they turn
Raised by the
18.
television.
Yeah, and then just kick them out the door. Literally kick them out at 18, and sink or swim.
Yeah.
It's from like a civilizational perspective. It is very weird. It's an outlier. I don't think any other generation has behaved this way.
No, and you're people my age don't. People my age are very concerned about the economic, material well-being of other people around them.
And you're also concerned about the future. I'd
Well,
say
yeah,
people in the younger generations think about it all the time, like how bad it's
millennials
going
are.
to
I know
get.
that.
Yeah, like how fucking bad is it going to get? Like that's the question you ask. And boomers don't ever seem to do this. You never get the impression from a boomer that they're actually worried about the direction of the country.
Oh, Alex, you've touched on my. Now people are going to love this. They loved when I got mad in the last show about the garbage boomer. Now I'm going to get really pissed in this show. I get so angry. I shouldn't fed post on the show. I'm not going to fed post on the show. But let's just say that I form fists when you're talking to a boomer and you get them in a fucking corner. And what do they say? Oh well, I'll be dead.
I'll
Oh,
be
I'll
dead.
be gone by then. And I like clenched jaw. I'm like imagining myself
Mm-hmm.
committing felonies. Like,
Yeah, it's
I'm
like, how about
oh
you go
my
right now?
God, you
How about you go
fucking
right
idiot.
now? We can arrange it. You want to die right now? Let's do it.
Oh my God,
Okay,
it makes
then.
me. Oh my God, I get so mad. It infuriates me.
That's like my other thing with them too is like because of their lack of investment in this in how things went and having kids and make sure they took care of them. It's like, when you get sick, just stagger off in the woods and die. Do us all a fucking favor. Don't expect us to take care of you. You go stagger off in the fucking woods and die.
Well, this is the other thing. And I'm not excusing it. Obviously, I think these people should be legally tried and hung. But it's not a surprise when boomers get abused in retirement homes.
They kind of deserve it.
Like, I don't know if I want to go that far personally, but you see it, and they're getting abused in the retirement home, and it's like, no wonder you're getting abused in the fucking retirement home. You dropped your kids like a hot rock.
Yeah.
And now you're in the retirement home, and they're not there.
Yeah. And now you got no one to take care of you, no one to have your back because you didn't invest in those relationships. You didn't think about their futures. You just thought about yourself and your boat truck. And
boat truck. I like that.
Between that, just like abusing service workers for your entire life.
Oh, God. Oh man, Alex, you're really trying to get me going on this episode, aren't you? I can't stand the God boomers that drive through windows make me want to scream.
Yeah. Because they are a very entitled, demanding group of
yes, they
infants.
are. Yes, they are. Well, so this is to circle back to younger people. Younger people, millennials in particular, Zoomers are slightly less good about this, but still fine. Millennials in particular are extremely polite people. Extremely polite people.
Because we had to work in those jobs. We had to work in those fucking jobs. We weren't like boomers. We didn't just magic ourselves into a decent paying job straight out of high school.
Well, so this is the
And
interesting.
that's the other thing too, is the idea of like the entry level fast food job that you then move up a ladder on. Like maybe you start in fast food and you work your way up and become like, I don't know, a manager for some sort of uh, food service company or something. But it sounds like
Warehouse
that.
manager for Gordon's or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. Because we had
lot
to
of
work in those
patience.
jobs. We had to
Yeah,
work in
exactly.
those fucking jobs. We
Exactly.
weren't like boomers. We didn't just magic ourselves into a decent paying job straight out of high school.
Well, so this is the
And
interesting.
that's the other thing too, is the idea of like the entry level fast food job that you then move up a ladder on. Like maybe you start in fast food and you work your way up and become like, I don't know, a manager for some sort of uh, food service company or something. But it sounds like
Warehouse
that.
manager for Gordon's or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean, a lot of people have a story like that, but
yeah.
that's not really. It looks like that's becoming less and less possible. It looks like we're
Yes,
getting to the point where, like,
it
to
is
be like the line manager at the McDonald's, they want you to have like a 4-year degree.
Yes, and the implication for this is you had asked how is this sustainable? And the answer to the question is it's not sustainable in the long term. But I'm 24, so I use myself as an example. What happens in 15 years when I'm staring down someone my age is staring down the age of 40 and has never had a job good enough to buy a home, buy a new car, and form a family?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, corporations might have a come to Jesus moment in 15 years after you have fucked about
Yeah.
70 million people who are currently under the age of 35, white people
Yeah, who
are
never got
currently under the
married,
age
never
of
had
35.
kids. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Did start families. Yep.
That is the social implication of this.
Yeah.
And other than state policy, the state forcing a change in the economy, I can't think of a way that this will change without it being 15 to 20 years from now.
Yeah. Well, there's
just-
obviously vested financial interests in the current paradigm because you've got so much money tied up in education and then textbooks and things like that. And oh my God, the textbook industry, that has got to be the biggest racket of almost any American racket. Like looking at the prices of textbooks and then looking at how the content is actually put together and what it consists of. It's insane.
A lot of states now are debating requiring that parents invest some or all of the money for textbooks.
What?
Yeah, that's been a discussion in a couple states now.
It's so ass backward. Why is America like this? Why don't you go after the textbook companies, not the fucking parents of the kids going to school? They're not setting the prices of those fucking textbooks. They're not making them expensive. You go ask the textbook companies why that shit's so expensive.
The free market, Alex. It's the free market.
Oh yeah.
They
the
can
free
gouge
market
whoever they want.
It's like you buy $1,000 textbook and then this unlocks online content and you get like terrible like text to voice bullshit that will like read you whatever the chapter is.
PDFs included.
Yeah, just plus your PDFs because everything has to be a PDF.
Oh, and they come with textbooks for teachers, and I think they come with suggested assignments. Like it's a whole, and this is a whole separate thing. I could do a whole show on. I could riff a whole show on my own about how in the 1960s the state used to do all of these things, as in the state would have a committee or an agency that wrote textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would sell them to another state or down from the Fed to the state, but it'd be really cheap. Essentially just covering the labor cost. And it was all done internally. And most things for the state were done this way, at least partially. And then in the 1960s and the 1970s, all of that was contracted out. Like, for example, the U.S. government doesn't make your passport. It's a private company. There are like in the whole world, there are like three major, and I think two of them are German, three major companies that manufacture passports. And companies contract this out to these, or countries contract this out to these companies. Whether or not you're filling out an application with the German Foreign Ministry or at the post office in the United States, it's the same company manufacturing that passport. Like
right.
all of this stuff, all of this stuff is sort of decentralized and has been put into the hands of one corporation or another, and these corporations rule the social space. There is no one policing them, and the worst thing is that there are people defending them.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, if you like think about it critically, like for a lot of jobs, the basic thrust of what you're doing has not changed. Like the technology may have changed a little bit. So exactly, like
The technology makes it easier.
Yeah, so like what kind of updating have we been doing in these textbooks all these years? Why do they keep growing in expense, even though the job, as you say, is getting easier? And really, all it's changed is like some peripheral technology here and there, which you're not going to get trained correctly on from the textbooks anyway. That's going to be completely dependent on what job you get, right? I
Right.
mean, to use like healthcare as an example, a textbook, I don't think they normally would even think of doing this, but they wouldn't train you on Epic, which is a software used for charting. Because when you get out, you might be at a hospital that doesn't use Epic, might be using a completely different software. So of course they're not going to waste time training you on charting software. All of that stuff happens on the job. It's kind of one of my eternal complaints about the way this education system works. Like most of what you're going to be doing day to day is something you will have to be trained for on the job anyhow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very little of what you get in your formal education is going to directly carry over to your job.
And to answer the question about prices, this was a thing I harped on constantly in 2022 on white papers, and you can go back through white papers, and I cite the OECD, I cite the Australian Central Bank, the Economic Policy Institute, the IMF, the corporate profit inflation report by the UK Parliament. Roughly 60 to 67% of all the inflation that we saw in the year 2021 and 2022 were corporate profits. Corporate profits.
Nice.
They weren't passing costs onto the consumer. They were making more profits. In 2022, Tyson, the chicken company, like where you buy your fucking chicken nuggets, their CEO went on MSNBC or whatever, NBC Business Network, whatever the hell, and they said, your profits are up 25.2% or whatever over a quarter. How do you justify that? Like, people can't afford that. And he looked at the camera and he said, people are still going and buying it. And
So
we're
I'm
going
gonna
to
keep selling it.
And as long as people are buying it, we're raising prices. And it's the same thing with the textbook thing. There are 50 state governments and the federal government, and God knows how many frickin' colleges in this country. And what are they doing? They're still buying textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
And now that they're getting increasingly unable to afford it, they're talking about parents buying textbooks. Like, this behavior, which it ties back to credentialism, sort of the unmitigated, unregulated behavior of neoliberal corporate America. Nothing can be done about this unless you use the state.
Yeah, there needs to be an adult in the room that goes up and says, you know what? How about we just nationalize a few of these companies and see what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't understand why there isn't. I'm about to sound like a socialist, and good, because I am.
Yeah, I am a socialist.
Why isn't there a state-owned company that is contracted by the state governments to produce textbooks? Yeah. Texas needs a history textbook. Texas pays for the labor to produce the textbook. They're done. There's the textbook. This shit is simple. Why are there dozens of textbook companies ripping off departments of education all over the country?
I mean, I would love to spend a little time researching the inflation of the prices of textbooks versus the actual content not really changing much at all. It looks to be just blatant rent seeking, given the prices that they're charging. The quality of the books themselves, because keep in mind, we're talking about paperback books here. We're not talking about hardcovers. Why am I paying $1,000 for something that's not even a fucking hardcover? Why must I pay for a new textbook like basically every year? Why? Oh, because you're just stealing money from people. You're just taking money from people. That's just legalized stealing. It's bullshit.
Legalized stealing describes life in modern America.
Yeah, pretty much everything in modern America.
It describes life in modern America.
And I don't know that there's necessarily like a conspiracy between the HR departments and the college system and the textbook manufacturers here. Probably not, but it is interesting how these things pile on each other, how there's a ripple effect with all of that.
A conspiracy, no, but like a total lack of interest in sort of investigating or doing anything, yes.
Yeah.
Like there's a conspiracy of the disinterested, and Republicans are the worst about this. They're ultimately like use public policy to resolve a problem. That sounds like communism. Make life better for people. No, thank you. Like that is sort of the attitude of, and it's not just Republicans, but they're the worst example. That is the attitude of policymakers in the United States. Sometimes they do deliberately do shit to make your life worse. Immigration is the perfect example. But other times they're just not interested in doing anything to make your life better.
There's a lot of things that Americans just sort of seem to take for granted as being normal for what's ostensibly supposed to be a first world country. Like, first of all, college itself, that you're paying to go to college. A lot of countries will pay for college for you. They have state-sponsored colleges in a lot of places where you don't pay a dime. Healthcare.
It's not even college. A lot of countries, Germany, I always go back to Germany. We talked about this, I think, in our second show, maybe. Germany has the most comprehensive trade, apprenticeship to job system and pipeline in the world. If you go into a trade in Germany, you are virtually guaranteed a job.
Mm-hmm.
That does not exist in the United States in any comprehensive way. It's totally up to like the individual trade schools to try to find partnerships, and they have to hope that the corporation will pay the intern. Like it's a whole thing.
The intern thing, let's get to that real fast, because that's
that interesting
American fucked up situation there with the idea of the unpaid intern. Because like, okay, we've got to get your experience. Well, how are you going to get your experience? Well, if they won't pay you as an entry level worker, what if you just volunteer? What if you're just an unpaid volunteer? You get your experience that way.
College credits.
Yeah. So now you've got companies that are effectively getting an unpaid labor force, slaves. They have slaves, which puts further like downward pressure on hiring for these entry level positions because, hey, we don't need to fill them. We've got slaves, right?
Right. Why hire a new logistics coordinator when we can hire an intern?
Mm-hmm.
An intern can direct the trucks for UPS. We don't have to pay someone to do
that. Yeah, we'll just have the slave do it.
The slave do it. Get me a slave.
Yeah, I mean, eventually he'll get enough experience, and maybe he can stop being a slave. He can obtain his freedom
at a marginal wage.
Yeah, he can buy his freedom.
Pay 33% of his income in rent.
Well, that's what's really fucked up is you're paying money to be a slave in America. You got to pay the education system to get your degree, and then you go intern for free somewhere and not get paid for it. It's insane.
It's incredible. It really is.
You're saying there are interns like sleeping in the basements of places?
Oh yeah. So this was a UN. So the United Nations does not pay their interns. So you have to think about this.
Of course they wouldn't.
Where are United Nations agencies located? Geneva, New York, Vienna, some of the most expensive cities in the world. And a while ago, the UN, the International Labor Organization, which is a UN body, found an intern had been sleeping in the basement because he's an unpaid intern. Mm-hmm. He couldn't afford an apartment in whatever city in Switzerland the damn building was in, so he was sleeping in the basement.
I think an interesting question to ask these companies would be like, organizations, like, so what would you do if you didn't have unpaid interns? What would this force you to do? Oh, you mean you'd have to hire people? Interesting.
Well, this same question sort of ripples out. What would you do if you didn't have cheap mass immigration, labor from mass immigration? Oh, you'd have to pay Americans well.
Yeah.
I wrote a post today. I'll bring this up because it actually it jives. I wrote a post today about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce published this stupid article about a company in Arizona that sells high performance hay for
I'm listening.
horse racing competitions.
Uh-huh.
And the guy said, this is a quote from this owner, "It's a hard job. You're unloading 100-pound bales of hay in Arizona in the summer in a metal barn. It might be 100 degrees. It's just tough to find people willing to do that. For the most part, Americans don't apply for these jobs." So this is like the old white people are lazy trope, right? Like white people just won't do this work. But
Right. Because I mean, it's hay for horses, so you can't use round bells. You got to use square bells, which 100 pounds of bell. Like what?
I don't know.
That doesn't
But
sound right.
what the Chamber of Commerce never tells you, it makes sure to tell you that white people are lazy and they need more Hondurans. But
Mhm.
farm wage workers, their median salary is $29,680. That's 57% below the average median income for a white household. Agricultural workers don't get paid overtime. There's no time and a half for agricultural workers. Agricultural workers were exempt from the National Labor Relations Act. They can't unionize.
That's really convenient for Monsanto.
Yes, isn't it? So white people are apparently lazy. Never mind the fact, and I wrote this in the post, never mind the fact that like 90% of steel and sheet metal workers are white. I have been in a fucking foundry. It is hot. Oh my God.
I have baled a lot of hay. I don't know if I'd want to do that job 8 hours a day. It's not.
90% of miners, electricians, cement masons, mechanics, these are all whites. Not over 90%. White men,
But
overwhelmingly white men.
yeah, when you say
But
that,
they have higher wages and they can unionize and they get overtime.
yeah, when you say that people don't want to do the job of baling hay purely because it's a sucky job, I'm gonna doubt that. I'm gonna highly doubt that they
Yeah.
want to do it because it doesn't pay. Because there's certainly other jobs that are worse than baling hay. Baling hay is not the most fun you can have, but I can think of worse things. I would say commercial landscaping that can be quite a bit worse.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised at all that people come and bale hay in an environment of just compensation where they're getting paid appropriately.
Mhm.
I could understand where, maybe the guy makes it for 2 years because that is backbreaking work.
Yeah,
but-
like I said, I wouldn't want to do that kind of work all the time.
he leaves
I
after-
have been paid to bale hay before. I got paid like $25 back in the late 90s
He
to bale
leaves.
hay.
Right, but the guy in the modern day leaves after 2 weeks because you're paying him like $11 an hour,
Mhm.
if that, and there's not health insurance, and he can't unionize, and he doesn't get overtime.
Yeah.
I'd fucking quit too.
Yeah, no, that sucks.
And this, people are squeezed from both. This is the other thing about America. I was thinking,
You're talking about like this high performance hay stuff. Like, okay,
Yeah.
so who are you selling this stuff to? It's the wealthy. You could just raise your prices.
yeah, it's for designer. It's for like those designer horse on display shows.
Yeah, they can afford to
Yeah,
charge more for the
absolutely.
product and then pay your workers more. Hey, problem solved.
Absolutely.
It's a luxury good.
Modern
It's literally a
America,
luxury. It's a luxury good.
It is a luxury good. Modern America squeezes people from both ends. Like you can't. I always think about like there's nowhere to go. There's no escape. You can't. There's nowhere to run. And I don't know. Like it is no wonder. It is no wonder. And it sounds a bit dark, but it is no wonder that the male suicide rate is so astronomically high.
Mm-hmm.
Drug abuse. I mean, the whole thing. Alcoholism has been
'cause
on the increase for 5 years. Like America crushes you.
There's no path. Like there's a series of life traps instead of a path.
Correct. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. There is a series of life traps, and you fall and you stumble, and when you look and like, is anyone going to help me up? No, they don't help you up. They spit on you, and I don't.
No, they're like, well, I got my truck. What's your problem?
truck boat. Oh God, and that seems like a good place to end it. We're at 57 minutes. I think we're done here.
Okay, let's get in the truck and get out of here.
Yeah. Start her up. It's a diesel.